Hey everyone, Gobotch here, back today with a brand new video for Warface Breakout. Today we are covering, as you can see in the title, we are going to be covering which SMG would be right for you in its current state as the game is just released. I'm going to talk about each of the SMGs and my personal preference from which one you should use primarily and which one you should go from, first to second, third, fourth, and, and whatnot, kind of for each side for the Wardens and for the Reapers for attack and defense. So if you want to see that today, I thank you all so much for making today's video part of your day. If you enjoy the video, hit that thumbs up, comment down below, and if you want me to do other weapon breakdowns for maybe sniper, SMG, shotguns, and handguns, let me know down in the comment sections and I will get on that as soon as I possibly can. But again, thank you so much for your continual support as we continue our coverage here for Breakout on the channel. So first and foremost, we're going to talk about the 4 SMGs for the Warden side. So the SMGs you have is the MP5, you have the Chris Super V, you have the SIG MPX, and then lastly you have their Desert Tech MDR. So these 4 SMGs all have their ups and downs in my personal opinion, so let's just break them down each one and then we'll talk about which ones I prefer from best to worst before we move on to the Reaper side. So first and foremost, the cheapest option you have is the MP5. This is the, I believe it's 900 or so, I can't remember exactly off the top of my head, but it's a rapid fire, meaning it's full auto. I have the red dot sight on it. It does a base damage of 25 per hit. Penetration is at 0.55, the RPM is 600, and the recoil is very low, and I can say that for all SMGs. The recoil for most of the SMGs is very, very low. Not a lot of sway or bounce at all. You can pretty much stay on target as long as you have good recoil control with your gameplay. So for the MP5 A4 A5, it's not a bad gun, especially if you're running a budget run on a round. Maybe you're in an early round, or maybe you're just trying to save some econ for future rounds. But the MP5 is not a bad pick. But it's certainly not as good as some of the later picks we're going to get into. So moving on to the second SMG in the econ tier for the Warden side, you have the rapid fire Chris Super here, which does the same damage as the MP5 at 25, but it does have an increased penetration at 0.5 more at 0.6. The RPM is also greater at 620, which is 20 higher than that of the MP5, and the recoil again is low. So in my opinion, again, if you're going to pick out from the first 2 SMGs, the silenced Super is, I think, a better pick overall. But then we're going to move into maybe one of my favorite picks out of all the SMGs for either side, and that is the SIG MPX SBR. This is a burst gun, so it means it shoots a 3-round burst instead of being fully auto. It does 30 damage on hits. The penetration is the highest yet, and that is a 0.64, and the RPM is at 650, with the recoil being very low. Again, you can tap as fast as you can tap that trigger, y'all. You can get headshots, and you can really dink guys. Unarmored headshots is instant. Low armor or even high armor, it's usually 2 to 3 bursts and they're dead, as long as you got good recoil control on there. And again, it's very low recoil, so it's very usable. Again, I personally say this is my favorite out of the Warden SMGs. That 3-round burst at even long range, y'all, if you can hit, if you have good accuracy, it's lethal and it melts. It just melts through enemies very quickly. So high pick there for the MPX, and it's superior damage. And then the final one, which is the most expensive on econ, is the Desert Tech MDR-C. This does 30 damage, which is, again, on par with the same on the MPX. The penetration is at its highest, which is great for armor, at a 0.8. That is the highest out of any of the SMGs. The RPM is also the highest at 700, but this one does have high recoil. It does have the biggest bounce on recoil shots out of any of the SMGs, so this one does need more skill use. I do recommend, if you're going to use this, maybe tap fire on the trigger to control that recoil. Other than that, if you want to do sprays with this from mid to close or even long, start about waist high and let that recoil bounce up through the mid chest and then onto the head, and you may be able to rip through enemies very quickly. Very powerful gun regardless any way you spin it, but of course that is because it is the most powerful and costs the most in terms of economy. So definitely something you may be using mid rounds and late rounds depending on where your econ is at that current point in the match. But for me personally, if I had to rank between the 4 SMGs for the Wardens, my personal preference goes MPX first and foremost, the 3-round burst SMG, then the Desert Tech MDR, the most expensive out of the 4, but obviously maybe the most blistering and just dominating you have out of all of them. And then you move on from that, I say the Chris Super, and then lastly the MP5A5. So let's get ready now to move on to the other side, and that is for the Reapers. Okay, so for the Reapers, again, you have 4 SMGs, and they're very complementary to that of the Wardens. They just have different names. So the first and foremost, the cheapest pick you get is the rapid fire the P90, which again correlates very much to the MP5. So comparing the two, the P90 does 25 damage, 55 penetration, 600 RPM, and low recoil. Again, it's a match for match with that of the MP5 on the other side for the Wardens. Again, a good econ pick if you need to use it. Very low recoil control, so as long as you can, realistically, this is not going to be a long-range shot. You want to be mid to close, and you can melt through your enemies, but there's better picks out there. FNP90, it's all right. Moving on to the Uzi Pro, 25 damage, 0.6 penetration, the RPM at 620, and the recoil is obviously low. Again, this is matched with that of the Chris Super 5 of the Wardens. Again, they're the same basic gun, just different weapons. Overall, they have the same stats and handle. Not a bad pick. I do prefer the Uzi Pro that over the P90. If you're going to go with one of these two, I would say use the Pro. But then if you want to save up a little bit more and use my preference, again, I like the burst fire guns. So that of the PM84, the Gobotch is my absolute favorite across the board. I know the MPX is they're basically the same gun. They do 30 damage, 0.64 penetration. The RPM is at 650 with a low recoil. Again, for some reason, just the burst fire guns with rapid trigger, if you could just tap that trigger as fast as you can, especially if you have an elite controller or a scuff controller where you can basically make the triggers be very sensitive to the touch, and if you barely hit it, it's going to shoot for you. This could be super lethal. That of the PM84, and then lastly, the most expensive option out of the econ is the LWRC SMG 45, which is basically your UMP 45. This does the most penetration in RPM, and damage is still at 30 compared to that of the Desert Tech, which is the same 0.8 penetration and RPM at 700. But again, the trade-off for all of it is the high recoil, which needs your own touch to be able to control that. Again, it's up to you what your preference is, whether you are a big fan of the SMG 45 or if you're a fan of the maybe the PM84. For me personally, if I had to rank the 4 here, again, it goes the Gobotch first, which is the burst fire, then the SMG 45, then the Uzi, then the P90. Same exact things basically from that of the Warden side. All these guns have their ups and their downs, but if you're into being able to maybe be, for me personally, I like to play mid to long range. I don't like to run a gun that much overall, which you may be seeing a little bit of that in the gameplay, but I like to be able to get picks at long distance on the alleys and the corridors. I think the PM84 and the MPX are both really, really good at recoil control and be able to hit at long range, but also being able to completely melt at close and mid-range especially. And then if, you know, at some point the Desert Tech and the SMG 45 are just good in all action because they're fully auto, so if you're close range you can melt really, really quickly on multiple foes and enemies because that clip is at 30, which is actually really, really solid. The highest clip out of any of them, of course, is that of your MPX, has 36 round clip. The Gobotch has a 32 round clip, but overall, you can't go wrong with either of those 4 options. For the Reaper side, if you go with the PM84 or the SMG 45, either way, if you spin those, are the 2 most expensive options you have out there, but they're going to result in a lot of really quick kills, regardless of armor or non-armor. I mean, it's just going to melt through guys as long as your aim is solid and you're aiming for the head as best you can. And then, of course, for the Warden side, you can pick between the MPX or the Desert Tech. You can't go wrong with either of them, but if you're going to pick for the economy picks, I do recommend for the Warden side, if you want to go cheap, the Chris Super 5 is good, and the Uzi Pro is not a bad pick as well. So if you wanted to save in that round, but still want an effective weapon at mid to close range, for the SMGs, go with those. But that's going to be it for me today. I just kind of wanted to break down the 8 different SMGs between the Wardens and the Reapers and give you my conclusive ranks at this current point in week 1 for Warface Breakout here on the channel. But we're going to do more of these types of breakdowns and feedback on the channel as we continue to grow out and do more. If you want to see me do more breakdowns for different weapon types, let me know down below and I will test as many as possible, because again, I've played with every weapon so far, but I've really spent most of my time with the SMGs because I'm just having an absolute blast melting out there with my preferred PM84 and the MPX. But let me know down below, what is your favorite SMG to run with currently for both the Reaper and the Warden? Let me know down below, but thank you all so much for tuning in. Please hit that thumbs up button to support this series and this channel. Comment down below. Feel free to join in the Gobotch family if you feel so inclined, and let's reach that goal of 10,000 subs. But thank you all so much for tuning in. Please stay safe out there, ladies and gentlemen. Have a great day, and we'll see you all back here in the next video. Y'all take it easy.